Hey everybody, Seth Apter back for another new release. This time it is all about Paper Artsy and mini stamps. I have 8 new mini stamps for you and I cannot wait for you to see them. I will be so curious to see what you make with them, and I am really happy any day that there's a new release because new stuff is always good stuff. And let's get into it. I'm going to share with you first each stamp just briefly, and then I'm going to take you through some details about each one and talk to you about inspiration, both mine and what I hope will be yours. There is 121, 122, 123, and I bet you can guess what's coming next. 124, 125, 126, 127, and 128. The theme behind these stamps is a loose theme that relates to old world, international, multicultural, and storytelling and symbols. That's a lot. But that's the notion behind here, that you can use all these abstract stamps in your artwork to create something that's unique to you, that tells a story and seems to speak a language, almost as if it's an alphabet, like 128. But it's kind of a secret alphabet. Their symbols, their shapes, they lean heavily onto lines, but they also lean into diamond shapes and V shapes and X's. I stayed away from too many circles this time, mainly because my last collection was heavy into circles, and I really wanted to prove my love for all different symbols, all different marks. And I'm going to share with you the way in which I use them in my sample artwork as a way to demonstrate to you some of what you can do. So we have 21. What's the easiest way, best way, the simplest way to show that off is just to stamp it. And yes, I know that the index card has it on it as well, but that's how I start with every stamp, whether they're mine or someone else's. I just literally stamp them. So this is 121. And then what I wanted to do was, for each of these stamps, I wanted to create a background. And I did that using the gel plate, using Paper Artsy paints, of course. And I added the stamp in some different ways, depending upon the stamp itself, the background, whatever I was inspired to do. I love the idea when you're creating mixed media that you are creating something that the viewer can't tell where it begins and where it ends. And so my aim is always to sandwich the layers in such a way that perhaps you can't tell if I started this with the stamps and then added paint, or I added paint and then added the stamps. So they're alternately dark, light, a little wonky, a little loose, not everywhere. And that is a good example of how I often do my backgrounds in mixed media, or at least one layer of them. Had to take it a little further and make a piece of art. And for this one, I made observation. You can see I used this stamp in the background. I feel like this could absolutely be a focal point stamp, and I'll share with you something at the very end to prove that. But I really, really love this stamp broken up in the background. And you can see it there, pretty dark in some areas, but light and faded in others. And I thought, you know what, after I did this background and mixed some stamps on the gel plate with Paper Artsy paints, I thought, oh my goodness, it's exactly what I thought. Oh my goodness. I thought that this embossing powder from Wow would be the perfect match to pull out some of those colors, and it would provide some shine and some texture. So that is observation. That is stamp 121. used my way. Of course, there's a million other ways to use it. You can actually color this in with different colors. And you can certainly emboss the whole stamp and not just emboss the additional layer. We're going to put that aside. We're going to move on to 122. 122 is a stronger stamp. This can absolutely be lost in the background, but for me, it kind of screams focal point. And my goal is to share with people that you can use abstract elements and simple shapes as a focal point. It does not have to be a representational focal point or a word necessarily. So that's 122. 122 stamped. And then 122 not lost in the background, but stamped repeatedly, just to show you the strength of that design. One of the things to be aware of is that while I did not specifically design the stamps with the sense of measurement so that they can be used side by side, I have shown in a lot of what I've done that you can do that with every stamp. So while there's a gap between these could absolutely be touching. And you can make that one continuous line. You can stamp this yet again vertically, top to bottom, and create a column. You can cover as much real estate as you need with each of these stamps. I use this abstract element on this collage to create a focal point. It was one of the last things I added, although I knew I was going to add it. And I realized that a lot of this doesn't pull the eye in. Maybe those three elements do. I did those with my dye sprays, but this draws you in. And one of the other beautiful things about these is that they actually echo the shape of the branches in the bare tree that's right there. I don't know if that reads as a bare tree, but that's what it is. And this is obviously a very abstract version of it, but this could be X's, this could be a fence, this could be so much. And again, leaning into this notion of symbolic storytelling, this does read as a linear line of kind of secret text. So that's called subject to change, and that is 122. We're going to move to 123. And this is where I just highlight yet again this idea that this can be used side by side where the edges link up either top to bottom or side to side. I didn't mention that in the first stamp, but that is also true there as well. So even though these stamps are small, they can cover large surfaces. 123, 123 stamped. I decided this one, just like I did with the first one, 121, would be beautiful lost in the background of this gel printed paper. So again, the goal with this is just to have it look like there's layers above and layers below. I sort of feel like this is almost like the peeling wallpaper effect, where there's been layers and layers and layers of wallpaper that's been torn back. And in some cases, this layer is showing, in some cases that layer is showing, in some cases that layer is showing, etc., etc. But I really love the sense of strong pattern you get, despite the fact that some of this is very softly stamped. And then the artwork, I call this of today. It's the story of today. This is used as a background, but it has been embossed, again, with one of my Wow embossing powders. This one is Dirty Verdi, one of my favorite names that I've come up with for embossing powder. And you can see that because it's embossed, it's got some shine. Not too much, because most of my powders are mostly matte. It's got a lot of texture, and it has a lot of heft to it, more so than if I just did it with ink. And then the other secret here is that this element here is one of my new die cuts coming out in just a few days from this recording with Sizzix for my first collection. So that is 123. Always fun to finally show what I've created and to be able to bring it to you and also see your response. This is 124. It's the only one that is at least loosely circular. It's really wonky dots, but the wonky dots are presented in a little bit of a wonky linear fashion. Once again, this notion that maybe this is telling a story. Maybe these symbols mean something. And so they're presented in almost paragraph form, loosely. These work, I think, really well lost in the background. They give just some sense of texture, some interest. It definitely provides a softness that a lot of the other ones don't, because they're pretty strong lines. And depending upon how you use it, you can have these lost more or come to the surface more. And the art piece for that, I call Trio. It's got a lot of layers, but layers in a little bit of a different way than I often do. But you can see this is used as a focal element. Obviously, the 3 watercolor marks here are also strongly focal, and they bring your eye to it, but this whole piece together becomes the focal point. And the other thing I loved about this was just the juxtaposition, don't say that word enough, of these little blobs enlarged in that little textural, scratchy blob right there. All right, so that is 124. And I'm halfway through this collection already, my friends. Let's move to 125. It's all about lines. Now, this is obviously a stamp that can be used for lines. You can use it as almost like a journal page, a ledger page. You can fill it in with different colors or different words, or you can let the background show. It can be placed in all different ways. You can extend it by stamping it several times north or south, east or west of it. You can absolutely use it to guide your stitching. It can be used as a funky swatching stamp. It's just so much more than just lines. Stamped out, that's what we have. And then in a full-on background, just filled, we have this. Now, I am showing you all of these background samples as a way to highlight the individual stamp, but most typically, I would be using 3 or 4 of each of these stamps to create that background where it floats above and below and is sandwiched in the layers of paint. But for this case, I wanted to really just highlight what each stamp can provide and offer. And the artwork, story. I wanted, again, just to show you that simple crossed lines can be a strong focal point. It's got the word story, and then the highlight for me is the 3 orangey red areas that are filled in. Just a sample of what you could fill in. You could fill it in, each one with a different color, and how phenomenal would that be, and how different would that be to this one with a sense of a vintage look. So that is 125. It's all about the lines. We have 126. Love this one. You know what? I do love them all. I wouldn't release them if I didn't love them. But this one, to me, particularly speaks to this loose theme that I have here of presenting symbols as language to tell a story. elements that can be used abstractly as either a focal point or a background, leaning into the linear sort of paragraph format of the symbols, and then also